Okay. Uh, I, Dr. Avnish Bhatt, along with Ms. Ekta Gelawat, and also with the student convener, Mr. Chandri Ray and Mir Aratsu, I warmly welcome from India to the participants, to the Indian participants, as well as the participants from all corners of the world to this international webinar on justice, the rule of law, and COVID 19. I take this privilege to tell you that we are fortunate enough to have with us Honorable Ladyship Justice Joyce Aluj, who has spared his precious time to enlighten us with the juristic thoughts on the said topic. Before proceeding further, I humbly request our Professor in charge, Dean, Professor Dr. Yugal Kishore, for the welcome address.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Dr. Avinish. So, good afternoon to everyone. Honorable Ladyship Justice Joyce Alot. Madam, if my pronunciation is wrong, then please excuse me, because we Indian have a typical type of pronunciation. So I will be excused for that. So, former Vice President of International Criminal Court and a very reputed international mediator, esteemed Vice Chancellor Sahab, Professor Dr. Muddu Vinayji, honorable judges from different part of the world and our country, distinguished academicians and law professionals from India and abroad, the academic coordinator of ICFI Law School, Madam Monica Kharola, convener of this particular international webinar, Dr. Avinish Bhatt, Ms. Ekta Gelawat, and my esteemed colleagues and dear student friends. At the outset, I wholeheartedly welcome the keynote speaker of this international webinar on justice, rule of law, and COVID-19, the Honorable Ladyship Justice Joyce. And further, I welcome the other judges, distinguished academicians, law professionals from India and abroad, and my esteemed colleagues of this university as well as other universities, and dear student friends. I would take this opportunity to speak a few words about this university and as well as the law school to introduce ourselves in a better way. So, Madam, ICFI University, Dehradun, was established in the year 2003 by a great institution builder and educationist, Mr. N.J. Yashaswi, through the legislation of Government of Uttarakhand. And from that time onwards, here in this university, we started imparting analytical, worldwide, career-oriented, innovative, and socially relevant quality education. And for this, university has secured this year 44th rank at as URI, that is World Universities with Real Application and Real Impact. So World University with Real Impact, URI, it was released by the United Nations Institute of Training and Research. So further, we have been proved to be capable of imparting our education and research through online, and therefore we have been awarded with the E-Lead Universities certificate. ICFI Law School also established in the year 2004, and from that time onwards, we have been providing standard legal education with a blend of professional skill and research. We have produced professionals who are professionally competent, technically sound, and socially relevant in this world. Law University Law School, therefore, has been ranked first in the Uttarakhand and sixth in the top ranking universities of super excellence in India by CSR GS DRC survey. Even the Indian best survey, the India Today, so MRDA survey has put in our university at the level of 26th, and where among all national law universities, central universities, and other universities. So with this, after this introduction, I would like to speak only a few words about the topic which has been chosen for today's international webinar. The topic, justice, the rule of law, and COVID-19 is really very relevant and contemporary at this period. We are all suffering from the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of the countries in the world, they have suffered injustice, and the rule of law at this juncture in some of the countries have taken backseat, and justice was denied. But of course, some countries of the world, they have proven to be having good record with as far as the justice delivery system is concerned, as far as the applicability of rule of law is concerned, even during this COVID regime. With this brief introduction, I request my Honourable Ladyship to please deliver her lecture, but after a brief introduction given by our convener, Dr. Avnish Bhattji. So please, Avnish Bhattji, please deliver a brief introduction of Madam, and then Madam will start her deliberations.
Respected sir, thank you very much for the brief introduction of the university. Thank you very much for giving this privilege to me to introduce our Honourable Ladyship Justice Joyce Loach. At the outset, I would like to introduce ma'am. So she is a former judge and first vice president of the International Criminal Court at The Hague, the Netherlands, and she presently resides in Nairobi, Kenya. She was the second women Court of Appeal and High Court judge as well as magistrate in Kenya. This is also bring to your kind notice that the Tufts University, Boston, United States of America, awarded her its top award, the Class of 1947 Award, honoris causa, in September 2018, making her the first Black person to receive such an honor, only awarded to those who have carried the university's ideal throughout their career. Honorable Ladyship, also a certified international mediator, certified advanced mediator, and chartered mediator in East Africa, as well as CEDR accredited mediator, London, United Kingdom. She is also an accredited trainer for foundation mediation skills at the Strathmore University Dispute Resolution Center, where she serves in a panel of mediators. She is also a member of Africa Arbitration Association, Rwanda. She is also a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, London and Kenya. International Council for Commercial Arbitration, that is the Peace Palace, The Hague, Nairobi Center for International Arbitration, where she serves in the domestic and international mediation panels. She has recently appointed chair of the advisory board of the newly formed African Asian Mediation Association. She is also a board member of the Mediators Beyond Borders of International and patron of Kisumu Mediation Center. So this is a brief introduction of Honorable Justice leadership. Now I humbly request our esteemed guest for the day to begin the session with the enlightening thoughts on the legal aspects.
Thank you very much. Shall I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am, please.
But you have something here which says the host has asked you to start your video. Shall I start video or share my screen?
Ma'am, you can share the screen.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, share, okay. Wow. And PP. Okay, slideshow and okay. Can you see the writing? Can you?
Yes, ma'am. It's clearly visible.
Thank you. Now, as I start, I thought, thank you for introducing me and thank you for inviting me and introducing me. But on the first slide, I thought I would introduce myself. That this is who I am today. That's my family. I have 3 daughters. 2 of them are married. I have 3 grandchildren, but unfortunately, before I was elected to the International Criminal Court, this was me in Kenya. And that was me at the International Criminal Court. I hope all the 4 are legible. You can see them. Okay?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So now I'll get on to my topic, justice, the rule of law, and COVID-19 pandemic. And I'll start by make a few definitions. And before I do that, I want to say that the unprecedented threat from COVID-19 pandemic has caused great suffering around the world, just as the Dean said. Whilst first and foremost, the pandemic is a public health crisis, there are related challenges that are consequential for containing it and for promoting a rapid and sustainable recovery. The struggle to uphold the rule of law and the role of the law enforcement in societies are amongst the challenges. Now, there are many definitions of justice, but this is my very simple definition, that justice is a concept of moral rightness based on ethics, rationality, law, natural law, religion, or equity. It is also the art of being just and fair. That's my very simple definition of justice. Now, the rule of law, if in the audience I were to ask 2 or 3 lawyers in the audience to give me a definition of the rule of law, or even if I ask 7, all 7 of them would give me different definitions of the rule of law. So I decided that I wanted to trace the rule of law for as far back as I could. Now, there was Alan Van Dicey. He was popularly known as A.C. Dicey. He was a professor of English law at Oxford and one of the professors of law at the London School of Economics and a leading constitutional lawyer of his day. And look at the year we are talking, 1885. Now, he popularized the phrase, the rule of law. And that's why I'm talking about him. Though its use goes back to the 17th century, but he popularized this phrase, the rule of law. Maybe that's why today we talk about the rule of law. Now, the rule of law, according to Dicey, means that no man is punishable or can be lawfully made to suffer in body or goods except for distinct breach of the law, and no man is above the law. And look at the period we are talking when Dicey was giving a definition of the rule of law. But I decided to use a universal definition of the rule of law, the one of the United Nations UN system, and it defines the rule of law as follows. A principle of governance where all persons, institutions, and entities, public and private, including the state, are accountable to the law. It's a system where laws are publicly promulgated, equally enforced irrespective of gender, race, or ethnicity. Laws are independently adjudicated and are consistent with international human rights, norms, and standards. The principles which define the rule of law include adherence to the principles of supremacy of the law, equality before the law, accountability to the law, fairness in the participation, fairness in the application of the law in decision making, legal certainty, avoidance of arbitrariness, and transparency. Now, COVID-19 and emergency measures. You will all attest to the fact that the pandemic created new challenges when it hit the world, and countries had to adopt. And most countries had some of these measures. There are several, but most countries had partial lockdown, social distancing, closure of schools and offices and other facilities except for essential services, promotion of vigorous hygiene protocols, including a frequent washing of hands, declaration of state of disaster, emergency, curfews, closure of ports, airspace, and sea, deployment of security forces, including police, army, military, establishment of COVID-19 response funds. These are some of the things that these emergency measures resulted in people's access to justice being denied, yet the need for justice arises every day, every hour. The lockdown also resulted in a surge in domestic violence and economic crisis. Gender-based violence, economic crisis. In Kenya, for example, a gender-based violence hotline provides vital support to both men and women. Its call volume became 4 times more than the previous year or previous years because of corona pandemic. The counselors take 24 calls, they take calls 24 hours in a day. Now there was, sorry, let me just check the, let me finish this. Sorry. There was increased police brutality, especially during the curfew hours. Do you mind? I beg your pardon. Can I just go back? So that I talk about the state courts and customary sorry, I'm just looking. Yeah. So alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. What I'm talking about is state courts versus customary and statutory justice. Because the courts were locked, there was a lockdown in courts or partial lockdown. What I'm saying is, as countries battle to contain COVID-19 pandemic and respond to socio-economic impact of the crisis, they are relying on justice providers to respond to a wide challenge of justice concerns. But the administrative complexity, slow pace, and the high costs associated with state courts means that in many respects, state courts are not suitable. From what we have seen lately, state courts may not be suitable in times of crisis because of the lockdown, because of all sorts of things. So countries must therefore look for customary and statutory justice providers to fill the gap. even the shortcomings of statutory legal systems, all these lockdowns or partial lockdowns, not being able to reach the courts. So countries have to look for customary and statutory providers to fill the gap, given these shortcomings. Perhaps this is the time to pay special attention to alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, traditional or community-based courts which can reduce the burden on statutory systems whilst providing faster and more satisfactory processes and outcomes for users. Permit me to talk about the experience in Kenya. That's where I am right now. In Kenya, for example, alternative dispute resolution, ADR, is anchored in the current constitution. We call it Constitution 2010 at Article 159 2C, which provides in part alternative forms of dispute resolution, including reconciliation, mediation, arbitration, traditional dispute resolution, and mechanisms shall be promoted. Relying on this constitutional provision, the judiciary, after amending relevant laws, commenced the court annex mediation as a pilot project in 2015. The project was successful, and within a year, we're successful going by the data that came out. And within a year, court annex mediation became a permanent program of the judiciary, and it helps to ease congestion in the courts. Currently, because of COVID-19, mediation has gone virtual. Just yesterday, I was conducting a virtual mediation where one of the parties was in California, one was based somewhere in Europe. The two lawyers were in different parts of Kenya. That's where mediation has gone to in Kenya. This year, as COVID-19 pandemic is still raging, the Chief Justice moved fast, and on the 1st of July 2020, he launched e-filing system. This changed the process of filing court documents here in Kenya, payment of court fees, and management of registries. Again, whilst COVID-19, we are still in the era of COVID-19. On 27th of August this year, again, the Chief Justice launched the Alternative Justice Systems Policy, AJS, which amongst other things, this policy, which amongst other things, recognizes alternative justice system as a legitimate system of resolving disputes as provided in the Constitution. That is how we are coping here in Kenya. Now, COVID-19 and the rule of law. Have emergencies imposed by governments breached the rule of law principles? That's the question I'm posing. Sadly, COVID-19 has swept the world. It has taken over our lives and even, I put in quotes, infected the rule of law. Governments all over the world have imposed severe restrictions on movements in a bid to contain the spread of the pandemic. However, there are fears that some leaders and parties are using the pandemic as an excuse to tighten control and thereby breach the rule of law principles. Recently, the Dutch Foreign Minister, Stef Blok, recently tweeted, and I quote him, "The rule of law, democracy, and fundamental rights must remain strong principles of our society, also in times of coronavirus," unquote. It is important, therefore, sorry, before I conclude, I just say one more thing. It is important, therefore, that we send a strong message to the leaders and people out there that they must not sacrifice the rule of law in times of crisis, of a crisis such as this. That they must not infringe on individual rights, including those given by the Constitution, under the guise of emergency measures to contain COVID-19 pandemic. That the authority of governments to impose emergency measures and limit individual freedom goes against the rule of law. Indeed, the claim to control every aspect aspect of an individual's life is associated with imprisonment, not a free society governed by the rule of law, which is the foundation of civilization and indeed the way we live. Emergency measures are indeed necessary in times such as this, but abandonment of the rule of law is not an option. The longer that these measures continue, the longer that these measures continue, the more they will infringe on the rule of law. The length of time the measures remain in force must therefore be checked periodically. Now, before I conclude, I just want to, because I'm going to the conclusion, but before I reach that conclusion, I wanted to just share with you what I read in an article yesterday. I think it was the Newsweek yesterday. Hungary and Poland to counter critics with rule of law institute. This is what the article said. Hungary and Poland plan to set up their own rule of law institute to hit back against criticism of declining democratic norms in the two countries, as well as point out laws in the systems of their critics. It comes at a time when many in the European Union would like harsher penalties for countries that flout the bloc's rule of law standards. So basically, Hungary and Poland were saying that they are going to set up their own institute of the rule of law because they don't want to be criticized in the manner in which they are. We'll wait and see if they do, then we can see what their institute of the rule of law would look like. But I was just reading that article yesterday in the Newsweek. So as I conclude, I wish to say that it is my hope that as the world leaders discuss joint action to contain and overcome the pandemic, they will consider the need to avoid enduring harm to the rule of law principles and fundamental freedoms. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention.
Respected ma'am, thank you very much for your crisp, brief, and elaboration on the rule of law. Your thought process, which you have guided us, and I now request, ma'am, with your permission, can we take a couple of questions?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So I request our student conveners, Ms. Chandri Ray, to kindly proceed with the question.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm looking for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I can hear you though. I can hear you. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
So, ma'am, I hope you're having a good time.
Yes, I'm talking to all of you, and I hope I'm making sense. Yes. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, my question to you is,
Yes.
it is a fact that the patients of psychopathy are not
Sorry?
considered mentally ill. And in similar cases, we see that law being applied as in case of mathematics, like in the rules of mathematics, we just put the equations, and in the same way, law seems to be applied in those similar ways. Is the rule of law arbitrary in this case to first punish them and then provide hospitality? Thank you.
I hope I understand what you're saying. That you say your question is that law is being applied like mathematics. Did you say that?
Yes,
Just
ma'am.
repeat the question, please, so that I can understand it properly. Yeah.
Ma'am, as in these patients of psychopathy, they are not considered to be mentally ill. And the crimes that are committed by them, they are treated like criminals only, like any other criminal. And no special provisions are available for them to like reform their, to like provide them reformative punishments. So in those cases, the law first punishes them and then they take them to the hospitals or asylums in order to provide them treatment. So do you think that in this case, the rule of law is arbitrary?
Well, let me answer that from what I see here back home. I see that mostly they tend to, if somebody is arrested and is suspected that he's not mentally well, I see that we out here, we examine them. We send them for medical examination, medical assessment, so that if they are to be punished, then they would be punished after a certification. I don't know how it is in your country. Mostly, unless they have not exhibited any signs at all that they are not well. Because if they have not exhibited any signs, they are arrested and they are punished, then really that would not be proper. But what I see is that they tend to take such persons for medical examination before they are subjected to a process of law. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request our another co-convener, Mr. Mir Aratsu, kindly proceed with the question.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for giving us this lecture. We got so much to learn from you. I have a question, if you allow.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, ma'am. Is e-filing better? Do you think it will be the new normal in coming years? Do you think
He
it
is
will be the
referring
new?
for electronic filing of the cases.
Yes, I can hardly see the process going backwards. We are in the new normal, and I'm not sure that we can totally go back to what we used to do before. Maybe to a certain extent, but probably not wholly. And anyway, how long is the new normal going to last? Does anybody know where we are today? Do we know how long? I don't think there's anybody who can answer that question. Maybe public health officials, maybe doctors, I'm not sure. Because when you look at the world map, when you listen to world news, you'll find that so many other countries that thought they were already clear of this pandemic, suddenly there is a surge. So I think we are in a situation where we cannot be, we don't know how long we are going to stay in that situation in which we are. That's what I can say.
Thank you, ma'am. We
Okay,
have
thank you.
one more person who is raising the hand, that is Chipo Musota Nikhata. You can unmute yourself. I have given the permission.
Thank you very much. Good morning on my side. Good afternoon to everyone else. Thank you for such an insightful presentation. My question has to do with whether you're able to share some of the policy lessons that could be learned from, particularly for access to justice for survivors of sexual gender-based violence. I noted in your presentation you mentioned the experiences, the increase in numbers, and how the justice system has been burdened by cases of various types of violations, including gender-based violence. And I wanted to hear from you if you've got any policy lessons that you can share with us on what should we be doing really to enhance access to justice for SGBV survivors. Thank you so much.
I think one way of handling it is, as I told you, we have call lines. You know, like before we used to have such call line for children, toll-free lines. We seem to have them here in the country where there are counselors at the other side of the line to receive these calls. That's one way of dealing with it. And also strengthening systems of justice that are not necessarily court system, like I talked about them. I think that's one way of dealing with, because they are much easier to convene and to make to convene faster than the process of going to court. And they are also spread out up to the communities in the villages, the sort of program that our Chief Justice launched in August. I think this pandemic now has made us think of these processes much more than we were thinking about them before. And for us in Kenya, for example, those who are opting for whether it's quarter-next mediation, they're being referred to mediators, and the mediators are handling matters virtually. So I think these are the systems that I talked about that have to be strengthened as we move forward. This is what I can see, that we have to strengthen other systems other than the court systems, because it's easier to convene a session under a tree with a village chief or that sort of thing and still manage to social distance and sort out a matter at that level. That's what I think. And I think it works. And that's why the Chief Justice in Kenya recently launched this alternative justice, a policy for alternative justice systems is now in place in Kenya, just since August. Yeah.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, one of the questions received from our participants that they were asking what will be your views on the legal paradigm shift in the post-COVID era?
The legal paradigm shift. What I can say is going virtual is likely to stay. Like here, for example, filing of cases is virtual. A lot of things have gone virtual. And I can't see that going completely back to where it was, maybe to a certain extent, but not completely back where it was. This COVID-19, we never anticipated that. We never anticipated anything like this, a virus that just hits the whole world until the whole world has got to adjust its way of doing things. So we would have to be convinced that there is no more virus, everything is back to normal, and that we have found vaccines for it, and we can go back where we were before. And when is that going to be? Is it going to be in December? Is it going to be next year? Is it going to be the year after next? There are so many uncertainties at the moment. That's what I think. I don't know what the dean thinks, but at the moment, there are so many uncertainties. And until these certainties are cleared, what we have now, or what you have in your country and what we have now, is what we will have to continue with. That's what I think.
Okay, respected ma'am. Thank you very much for your patience answering the questions, and consistently we are bombarding with all the questions to you. But thank you very much for your time. Now I humbly request our academic coordinator, Madam Monica Karola, for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Avnish. A very good afternoon to all participants of this virtual lecture. I, on behalf of ICFI Law School and ICFI University, Dehradun, would take this privilege to give the vote of thanks to our learned speaker. Ma'am, it has been wonderful listening to you, and we have understood the concept of justice, rule of law, and how it has been impacted by the COVID-19. It's been a dramatic change for the world over, and we have learned to live with it, and probably, as you say, that we'll have to continue with it for maybe years together. And if this pandemic ends, there'll be others to come. So we must take our lessons and find ways of making the best of what we have. Humanity has to succeed, and for that, we have all to work together. This pandemic has shown us how united we are, and we are blessed to have been getting such information. It has brought us together, and today we are able to listen to you thanks to this pandemic, which has, thrown us overboard. But we will have to realize that there are important lessons, as you said. we must learn, and especially since the courts have become very far for the individuals, the citizens to reach the courts, and the long haul process that they have to follow. So as you rightly said, that alternative dispute resolution mechanism must be enhanced. In India too, it has been focused and it is being increasingly used in order to dispense justice to all people. Ma'am, it has been wonderful listening to you, and I'm sure that the participants of this lecture have been immensely benefited. We thank you for being with us and giving us this wonderful talk, which was very informative, and the students are motivated. Today, they are seeing a judge from the International Criminal Court before them, and that inspires them to work, that there are greater heights that they can achieve. So to our all students in India and abroad, please take lessons. You have to uh, aspire to be good and to see that justice is delivered properly. For that, you must have your role models, and one of which you have in front of you. I take this opportunity to thank you, ma'am, on behalf of all the participants and on behalf of ICFI University, Dehradun. Thank you once again for being with us and delivering this guest lecture. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, Avnish.
Yes, ma'am. Uh, I think our respected Dean, sir, would like to say something. Sir, sir, you need to unmute yourself first.
So I thank very much our most learned speaker, ladyship, Madam Joyce. She has given us insight into the definitions of rule of law and its applicability at a different countries. So we are very much grateful to you, madam, and we are thankful to you, and we wish that in future also we'll get the opportunity of hearing you. With that, I thank you very much. I welcome you again that you are here. Okay, madam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, with your permission, can we close?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar, madam. Namaskar.